It's a great pleasure to be here today with Professor Karin van Es from Utrecht University. Karin's a leading expert in digital media research who works at the intersection of screen studies and information studies. And we're very, very lucky to have you speaking with us, Karin. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about the work you do and your background as a researcher?
If we go way back, it starts with my PhD thesis, which was on the intersection of television and new media studies. So it was on the concept of liveness in the social media area specifically. And it was interesting because my work there led to exploring different case studies, one of which was The Voice.
The reality show?
The reality show The Voice, and it had this social TV aspect to it. And it led to me in the middle of the night taking screenshots of tweets online to kind of also try and examine how they were tweeting about the liveness of the show and reacting to it. And then I thought there has to be a better way. So that kind of led me to more looking into more computational methods I could use to do this type of research. And that has kind of reemerged in the work I've been increasingly doing together with colleagues as well, because I'm not that computationally apt myself, but I'm pretty good at understanding what can be and cannot be done with computational methods. But a lot of my work has been on software studies.
Computational methods. Yeah. What does that term mean?
Oh, what does that term? Yeah. So it's actually the ability to, sometimes it's used as a term to describe not the close reading of text, but actually the distant reading of texts with computer methods. So you can use you can work from a larger distance on a far larger scale collecting data. So it's instead of looking at one interface of a VOD platform, you could potentially scrape hundreds and thousands and then try and analyze that with the help of automation.
Fantastic. So you're studying the internet, but also using internet methods or digital methods as well. And for all the students listening to this, Karin's book, The Future of Live, is an absolutely fantastic read, which you should all check out and which is in our library. Mm-hmm. That's the title, isn't it? The Future of Live?
Yes, yep. Thanks.
Good. Cool. And so, yes, could I ask you about a very recent project that you've been working on over the last year or so, which is a data donation project where you're asking members of the public to share some of their platform data with you, and specifically their Netflix accounts with you. Could you tell us a little bit about this project and how it worked?
Yeah, so it was actually part of a larger project within the Netherlands where they're building an infrastructure to support data donations for researchers. And it has to do with the fact that here in the European Union, but also in other countries, citizens now have the right to access their data from data processors. So that would include Netflix indeed, but also other major platforms now have these easy buttons built into their interfaces where you can actually request your data. And usually they will send you your personal data within 30 days. And the idea behind data donations is that we then ask these citizens to request their data and donate it for research purposes. And that has a lot to do with how these major platforms are not giving researchers the access they might need to interaction data. So we have very little insight actually in how people are consuming and what they are doing and encountering on these platforms. So the idea behind this project specifically was, okay, Netflix has kind of moved from not sharing any data to sharing a little data now with its engagement reports, but these are very high over. They're not very granular, and it's sometimes really even hard to still understand how many people are actually watching shows or what's even going on. And of course, you also don't know how individuals, how they go through the catalog, right? You only know, well, that might have been watched for 100,000 hours, but the context is lacking as well. So the idea was, what can we meaningfully try and say when we have access to such data? And we kind of thought, okay, if we can connect this to some of the claims Netflix has been making itself, this would be an opportunity to kind of talk back. So there's a lot of narratives that Netflix kind of circulates in the beginning, especially around its binge-worthy content. Okay, well, people are binging, but how big is this phenomenon actually? But also about, we know very little about the popularity of content, right? We only know kind of what they tell us in terms of what is popular. And then there's also one of the things we looked at, kind of the diversity of content, and that has to do with also how we here have regulations that they need at least 30% of their catalog to contain European content. That content needs to be prominently shown within their interface. And then our question was, okay, that's all nice, but at the end of the day, are people actually consuming that European content as well? So in the end, we worked together with Ipsos E&O, which is one of these companies that can help you connect you to a panel. And this panel then
market research kind of
market research company, yeah.
Yep.
And then we had, at the end of the day, 126 people donate in the Netherlands. So that was one of the criteria we had, accounts in the Netherlands, donate their data packages to us, and using computational methods, we try to think through these things: binge watching, diversity, and popularity, but just exploratory analysis, and kind of see, is it possible to start talking back a little to these claims that have been made.
So 126 people with probably thousands and thousands of viewing instances or viewing sessions, or so it would have been a lot of data to go through.
So the nice thing about data donations is that you don't start data collection from the moment that you decide to do it, but you already have the data in a history, right? So when we get these 126 people to donate their data, we actually get data from when they open their accounts.
Wow.
So it goes back, which is really, really nice. It's also an advantage with data donations that it requires cooperation from the people who donate their data, which also allows you to add on a survey when they don't donate their data, which might add some needed contextual information as well. But yeah, it's a lot of data. So in the end, we also had to make decisions, particularly around questions of, okay, I think in the end we chose to take only data for the year 2023, also because the catalogs of these services change a lot, so you kind of want a period of time you can actually say something meaningful about. Yeah, what else? And one of the biggest challenges, though, because you say there's a lot of data, indeed, but there's also a lot of data not there, because there's still a lot of questions about, especially when you want to think about diversity, which countries are they coming from? Where were the production countries of these? So there's a lot of enrichment that's needed as well. So then you have to go to other databases like IMDb or something to help fill in some gaps around also the runtime of these shows, because you want to know how long is even the show they were watching. You have the name of the show, but you don't know how long it was in total. You know how long they watched it, but then you're not sure if they watch the entire thing, because so these things you have to enrich
from IMDb and other kinds of databases and mash it all together.
Yeah, it's quite messy, and it's very time consuming as well to match up, because even in the data you get, it's they write titles differently over time, and then you have to make a lot of decisions in how you handle the data, which is not as objective as people tend to think.
Yes, so there's a lot of interpretation and judgment amongst all the...
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, and so what did you learn from this? And I'm really interested in two of your findings in particular. So the one around popularity too, because Netflix, there's been so many interesting debates around suggesting that Netflix has, contributed to fragmentation of the media, where everyone's watching different things and there's no popular culture anymore. Did you find this in your research, or did you find that there were still shows that significant numbers of people were watching?
Yeah, so both. So on the one hand, there is this tendency for fragmentation, but also this tendency towards watching the same shows. And we saw what's often in internet studies found is the long tail distribution, where 20% of the shows account for 80% of the viewers who are watching it. So we did at a certain point see such a long tail emerge, well, where there are, like, I think in our instance it was like 20. Was it 20 of the shows that we had collected in the data donations were watched by, was it 63% or something of the people who had participated as well. But also what we saw, there were a lot of shows that were watched by less than 5 people or even only 1 person. And there was very little overlap in that. So there's a lot of specific shows, but of course it's only a small sample. So we had this duality. On the one hand, again, you have those shows everyone's watching, but then there's also so much that's just being viewed by a handful of people.
Yes, right. So there is a kind of blockbuster effect where the big releases are getting sizable audiences. So I think The Night Guard was the #1 show in your sample. Is that right?
The Night Agent. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, yes, that's great.
And shows like that, and in Europe, Lupin, the French detective, Sex Education, and The Crown, these types of shows.
Right. Yeah. So it was, about 1/3 to 40% or something of people in your sample were watching those shows, which is really interesting. So it shows there is something like a mass audience for at least some of the streaming shows. But then you've got, a whole bunch of shows that it gets more and more personalized and more fragmented down as you go down the to the tail.
Yeah. Actually, I'm looking back at the data. It was actually quite much more than I was. 92% of the people in our data set watched one of the 20 top 10 shows.
All right. Very interesting. So Netflix really able to assemble big audiences in a way, despite all of its talk around personalization and so forth. It really is still a kind of a hit machine in the traditional sense then. Yeah. And then can we also ask you about what you found about language and cultural diversity of the content as well? Yeah. So the language is really interesting because you're researching in Europe from the Netherlands, and these were Dutch people that you asked. And were they most often watching in English or Dutch or another language, or how did it work?
Yeah, so we weren't actually looking at language. We were looking at production countries.
Yeah.
We could have looked at language and looking at what subtitles they were using, probably. But it actually is, what I liked about this data donations project, this Netflix project, is that a lot of what we already kind of felt that we knew is now kind of being empirically shown. So we had a lot of hunches about things. Like, indeed, we see again, right, that most of the content being consumed is from the United States, and there's a lot also from the United Kingdom. And in our situation, we also have some of that Asian content come in from Korea, which kind of resonates also with what we already knew. But at the same time,
the popularity of Korean content really was quite significant in your study, wasn't it? Like 40%?
Yes, South Korean and Spanish content. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. But then also, pardon?
In almost all the Netflix markets now, it seems like that Korean is it's English language content, and then Korean is as the next, the kind of
taking a lift,
global hegemon. Yeah. Sorry, please continue.
And then we also found that Dutch content itself was quite popular, right? Especially for how little of Dutch content is in the catalog. It was actually viewed quite significantly by, I think that at least 55% of the people in our sample were watching Dutch content, despite it being such a small, because when I say 30% of their catalog has to be European, right? Of that European, probably only a couple titles are going to be Dutch. So it's actually a very small selection of the catalog would be Dutch, but then in terms of how many people are viewing it, it's quite significant, which also kind of echoes what we've heard from Netflix representative, who really emphasized that they're now focused on making local for local, and commenting on how having real local hits actually helps them up their subscriber base.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Well, Karin, you've given us an incredible insight into what's possible with studying the internet, studying platforms, and when you're stuck with the kind of black box of platform data and not being able to access data on those platforms, you've given us a really interesting workaround, which is going straight to people and asking them to donate their data. So.
Yeah, but can I add one small caveat to all this? Because what I find super interesting also is to hear that Netflix has commissioned research in France and Spain, for instance, to find out if people are watching together. So they've commissioned research about collective viewing. And then this is exactly kind of also the challenge we had in working with this data, that you lack a lot of context. Why are people watching? Who are they watching with? If there's like 10 minutes of non-watching, what's the meaning behind that? So I think it's been super interesting, but I wish in hindsight we had a little more context to what we were seeing in the data, which would have been nice to kind of walk through with people through their own watching histories and kind of ask. That could have been a great supplement as well. So that I think there's great opportunities there, but I really, as a qualitative researcher, in the end, miss some of that context that we have. Yeah.
That's right, because a play, it could be they put it on for their dog while they go out to work, or it could be the housemate come in, or we don't really know the stories there, do we? So it shows the limitations of data, of big data as well too. You lose some of that granularity.
Even for the companies themselves commissioning qualitative research. Yeah.
Indeed. Oh, well, that can be your next project, and we'll all wait with bated breath for your findings. So, Karin, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have this research chat with you, and all the best with your next project.
Thanks.
Thank you.